Pasha and I were going to get married. It was love at first sight. 2 weeks after we met, we began to live together, and a month later he proposed to me. And everything was just fine until the moment when his sister asked us to look after her son Vavka and her and Pavel's elderly mother, who had been ill for a long time and hardly got out of bed. My sister had to urgently leave on a business trip for a week. If I had only known then how it would all turn out, I would never have agreed. But, unfortunately, time cannot be returned. The husband's relatives lived in the region in a private house. I immediately did not like this place. There was something sinister in it. On the very first night in a new place, I began to have strange dreams, that a terrible black shadow was chasing me. I felt that if she managed to overtake me, then something irreparable would certainly happen. The next day in the new house also brought its own surprises. Someone wrote on the kitchen window pane in red paint, "Get out, bitch." But as soon as I called Pasha, the inscription mysteriously disappeared. That night I had nightmares again. This time the shadow was closer. Days, I began to notice how something seemed to flicker at the head of my mother-in-law's bed. But every time I came closer to look, the shadow disappeared. That night, a shadow in my dream overtook me. I woke up in a cold sweat, not understanding where I was. Pasha hardly managed to calm me down. It all happened the next day. Beloved went to the city for food, and I stayed on the farm. When I was chopping vegetables for soup, I noticed out of the corner of my eye how someone's silhouette flashed in the corridor. I called Vavka. Silence. Again. Again no one answered. I heard a groan from Pavel's mother's room, turning into a wheeze. I armed myself with a kitchen knife and slowly walked towards the sound. From what I saw in the room, I was stunned. The mother-in-law was lying on her bed, shrouded in a black shadow. I immediately recognized her. It was the same ominous shadow from my dream. The poor woman was hoarse and could not move. Her face twisted into a grimace of horror, her eyes rolled back, and her mouth was wide open in a silent scream. Suddenly, the shadow, as if in a funnel, was drawn into the open mouth of the woman, and the body of the unfortunate woman went limp without feeling. And in a second it twitched and stirred. The elderly woman stood up heavily and sat on the bed. Her eyes were filled with red, her eyes full of rage. Something took possession of her. With a wild roar, it rushed at me. The icy hands of my mother-in-law closed around my neck like a death grip. Terrified, I began to fight back, and a struggle ensued between us. Finally, I managed to reach the knife that fell out of my hands, with which I cut vegetables. I'm scared to remember this, but I stuck his mother-in-law right in the neck. Vavka ran up to the noise. The shadow sensed a new victim. She immediately left the dead body of the old woman and rushed to the boy. I couldn't do anything. Vavka's eyes filled with blood in the same way. He grabbed some object and ran at me. We began to fight. This is the last thing I remember. Then I lost consciousness. When I entered, I saw how Valya, my Valya, covered in blood, hung over Vavka with a knife. Pavel told the investigator. My mother was next to me. All covered in blood. I didn't know what to do. I took the vase from the chest of drawers and just hit Valya on the head with it. She switched off immediately. Then I barely calmed down Vova, but he only stuttered and could not utter a word. You did everything right. The boy was just lucky that you had time. Not everyone so lucky, the investigator sighed. This woman is responsible for dozens of murders. She has been wanted for a long time. Valentina always acts according to the same scenario. She finds a man for herself, lives with him, things go to the wedding. But then, over time, she begins to talk about strange dreams and some kind of shadows. Then the attacks become stronger, hallucinations, delirium. However, You know the end. According to the materials of the case, Valentina experienced a very strong shock as a child. A robber broke into her house. He stabbed Valya's father and mother. The girl managed to hide under the bed and did not see the attacker's face, but only his shadow.